Mission accomplished. Once the brigade gets to Havana, I can deal with Higgins. Understood. Patch stood and motioned Meinkewitz back with the gun. In the sky, the T-33 jets attacked more of the brigade's B-26 propeller combat-painted planes. Patch checked the map. We're less than a half an hour from that road. If we don't get shot, we'll be okay. Meinkewitz froze like a compass needle stuck in a northward direction. Carlos swam toward the opposite shore at the far end of the water. I thought for sure you shot him. How the hell did he stay under? Both men reversed direction and at full speed returned to the water's edge. Patch again got down on one knee. Meinkewitz had already commenced firing his weapon. The bullets clearly splashed in the surface around the swimming Carlos like massive hailstones. He's too far away, Patch. Patch reloaded the rifle clip, but Meinkewitz grabbed his arm. We need to chase him again. Can't believe I missed him. Carlos emerged from the water on his knees like an amphibious monster and crab-walked into the woods. Patch jogged ahead of Meinkewitz up the shore, but he had forced Carlos west toward the 1st Battalion troops on the San Blas Road. Killing Carlos now required getting closer and not missing. Chapter 31. Zapata Swamp, east of San Blas, Monday, April 17, 1961, 2:11 p.m. Sweat beaded across his forehead and soaked into his fatigues. When Patch lost Carlos's trail, he retreated back to the Cuban's last known sighting, broken branches by a trickling stream. Patch wiped his brow with his sleeve and then kicked at the mud. He had no indication whether Carlos had plowed through the swamp or crossed to the opposite grassy shore. So, he just disappears? Asked Meinkewitz. With the rifle strapped to his shoulder, Patch straddled 2 clumps of hardened earth. I say he traveled in the stream bed itself, but I don't see anything stirred up. He got away. Maybe it's okay, Patch. He may have stopped the 1986 attacks. There's no way to determine that, Ray, unless he's dead. Meinkewitz positioned the binoculars toward the next grassy area. Activity over there, Patch. What is it? Probably the 1st Battalion. Let's link up with them and send a contingent out after Carlos. Patch shook his head. You go to the 1st Battalion, Ray. If they're across this clearing, then Carlos must have gone north. No, we shouldn't separate. I can see the handwriting on the wall, he said, ripping off his pack. He threw his radio at Meinkewitz. I'm going to kill him, Ray. I'm going to kill him right now. Patch, you're not thinking clearly. Patch! Patch leaped into the clearing and he held his rifle over his head. He hopped like a jackrabbit in the afternoon shadows. The matted down grass blades trailed in a northerly direction toward the distant farmland. But the terrain changed abruptly. He carried his weapon diagonally as he traipsed across more mushy ground with occasional water pools. Carlos's boot prints, solid in the mud, turned westward. Maybe he wanted to get out on the road. Patch lumbered toward the road, several hundred yards away. In his haste, he tripped and his weapon careened into the mush. He leaped up, his fatigues dripping with water and mud, but his rifle lay submerged in 1.5 feet of water. The swamp's sulfur mulch inundated his clothes. He unbuttoned and removed his saturated shirt. Then he grabbed the dripping, wet rifle. He grunted and hurled it across the grass. With no weapon, he raced in his olive undershirt toward the mangroves. Fighting continued to the west. Upon leaving the swamp, he reached a point less than 100 feet from a barbed wire fence paralleling the quiet asphalt road. Survival dictated procuring a weapon from the 1st Battalion to the south. He looked back across the swamp and wished he had not left Meinkewitz alone on the other side. Just a few feet from the fence, a shadow blocked the sun. Carlos, his mouth open wide in rage, stormed at him like a rabid grizzly bear. Patch pivoted but could not brace himself. Carlos's forearm and left fist impacted against his shoulder, hard enough to send him back. He landed on his side and immediately spun into the grass. Carlos leaped on top of him with his arms extended. You are an American! He pinned Patch's shoulders back. His enraged dark eyes and exposed incisors were inches from Patch's face. You are firing at me! You're crazy. I'm Kincaid. My weapon was taken by the brigade. I escaped them from along the road. Carlos grabbed his jersey and hoisted Patch to his feet. You've been in the Zapata. I don't believe you. Why the hell would an American be fighting against these invaders? I'm here to join the revolution. Carlos released his grip and then laughed. And you are a lousy American actor. I'm on my way to the revolutionary forces. Carlos squinted. I do not believe you. Eric Bonheim's people contacted me. Carlos inhaled and stepped back. You will come with me as my hostage. You are an American. What are you going to do when the brigade takes Havana? We have to stop them. This whole invasion is a joke, said Carlos. Out to the road. You are my prisoner. He shoved Patch toward the barbed wire fence. Without a weapon, Patch had no hope of killing this Hulk. Both men stepped onto the asphalt and started north. Up ahead, a truck started down the highway, but back toward San Blaise as the tank rolled forward. The brigade, shouted Patch. As soon as he could grab a weapon, he would kill Carlos. Back the other way. A pack of soldiers ran forward between the jeeps. This is insane. I will not be a prisoner to any man. Al Leopardo! He shook his head and grabbed the back of Patch's neck. If we run, we will be executed. Patch did not see Meinkewitz. The two jeeps whined to a sudden stop diagonally across from the highway and exhaust hung in the air. A short man with several days' beard growth stepped forward. You are a prisoner. Carlos studied Patch closely. Kincaid, tell them we are not afraid to die. Listen to him, shouted Patch, still searching for Meinkewitz. He will listen to us. You two will move ahead of the brigade into combat. He turned to the men in the truck. March them first. You will be killed by your own men. We've been taking their damned artillery since noon. They were forced up the road under several skinny palm trees. Some little brigade lieutenant ordered them to stay ahead of the advancing trucks or be shot. I have another man with me, Carlos, a physicist, Ray Meinkewitz. Carlos again stared at him. For what reason do you defect, Kincaid? Bonheim? No, Higgins. Meinkewitz and I can help Higgins and the Soviets. Are you shitting me? Carlos leaned closer as he stepped forward. I still do not trust you. Cuba is crawling with men who want to kill Fidel. And who exactly are you? Patriot who is supposed to be in the United States. You mean defect? If that's what it takes, my friend. A mortar shell exploded in the grass and debris sprayed onto the highway. They knelt down on the road shoulder. Somebody yelled for Carlos to keep moving. To the north, Cuban soldiers were visible across the highway. Gomez will push these people back to Iran. Patch recognized the sound of 50mm guns just before the explosion ahead shook the ground. How did we get by them? Somebody else will recognize me, said Carlos. They'd only gone a few hundred feet when a cluster of government soldiers appeared near the trees ahead. They are lining up bazookas and mortars. Get down! Patch planted his foot on the asphalt but slipped on the road dirt. As the attack commenced, the road exploded all around him. A deep pain tore across his left side and shoulder as he toppled over the scrambling Carlos. Blood trickled down his arm and pebbles had pummeled his shredded face. Carlos encircled his huge hands around Patch's wrist. He dragged Patch off the road. The 1st Battalion returned the fire from the convoy and the Cubans retreated. You saved my life. God damn it, you did. With pain in his ribs spreading up his arm, Patch had difficulty keeping his eyes open. His stilted breathing prevented him from standing. A brigade officer to the rear directed the machine gun fire at the government troops to the north. Water, said Patch, wiping the blood out of his mouth with his sleeve. Carlos stayed near him. Hold on, my friend, hold on. Then he saw the lieutenant standing over him. This man needs water, cried Carlos. The lieutenant quickly ripped a canteen from one of the soldiers. Where are the medics? Shouted Carlos, lifting the canteen to Patch's mouth. As the lieutenant retreated toward the trucks, Patch lifted his chin up and spoke in a raspy voice to Carlos. Ray Meinkewitz, physicist, find him. He knows Stephen Higgins. He wants to defect. Carlos nodded and his head darted from side to side. I know this terrain very well. I will get us to our troops. I will help you, Kincaid. The sky fluctuated between a hazy blur and an occasional clear view of the treetops. Shells landed behind him as columns of exiles raced down the road. He closed his eyes again. Meínkewitz's whereabouts bothered him. Jets buzzed overhead as the pain throbbed in his ribs and shoulder. Iodine or an antibiotic odor drifted over him. Someone hoisted him onto a stretcher. They lowered him into the back of a vehicle, possibly a Jeep 4x4. The engine started and somebody shifted up the road. The sun singed his pitted wounds as they raced along. After a loud crack near the Jeep, followed by a downshift, the engine went out. The Jeep rolled to a stop. Carlos Sánchez bellowed out, "Victoria al Norte!" The Jeep engine turned over and Patch's shoulder pushed against the metal as they jolted forward. Carlos rumbled off the asphalt and then swung back on the road. Bullets pinged off the fender. The mortars exploded behind him now. Carlos screamed back in Spanish. Patch pictured the older Carlos killing Meinkewitz at Sector 13. Another mortar shell exploded, and dirt rained down as the Jeep spun. "To Carlos Sánchez!" Carlos began speaking in Spanish to some of the soldiers off to the side. Like a strobe light illuminating an object in the dark, Patch experienced portions of a bumpy ride under the tall, thin palms and fluffy-leaved mangroves. Jets swept down and small arms fire arrived from the west. His parched mouth and sun baked his face. Squelching thoughts of killing Carlos Sánchez, the very man trying to keep him alive. Then he opened his eyes as the shade eased the hot sun. His body had grown weaker since the mortar explosion on the San Blas road. Somehow Carlos had squeezed behind the Cuban lines. 3 soldiers gazed into the Jeep. One of them checked his face and Carlos appeared. He said something to the man with the thin mustache. "He needs to look at your wounds, Kincaid," said Carlos, leaning closer. "I need water." A soldier brought a glass mug and a metal cup. Carlos filled the cup as the doctor lifted Patch's head up. Carlos slowly poured the water into Patch's parched throat. Patch coughed and then closed his eyes. Pain intensified. In a blurry image, he saw the doctor lifting his jersey. Then they injected him with something. The pain eased, but he went out. Central Australia, Old Sugar Mill, Agua Grande, Cuba, Monday, April 17, 1961, 3:05 p.m. Patch awoke with a binding around his ribs. His numb face no longer hurt. The anti-aircraft guns reverberated around the dirty metal building about 50 feet away. A towering smokestack rose into the afternoon sky behind a sloping tiered roof. Troops ran along the smaller colonnade building. "You are awake," said an old man with a thick accent. Patch pulled himself up. "And he survived," said Carlos, now fully armed and ammunition belts over his shoulders. "Not to worry. General Fernando is in charge, and he will advance on Playa Largo." "Damn weak. We are shipping you to the Centro Medico in Havana because you need antibiotics so the infection doesn't spread. But I warn you, you will be questioned after you recover." "Okay. Your physicist friend was captured north of Playa Largo." "Is he still alive?" "Si, but he cannot go with you. The commander. He will be here at the mill very soon. He wants to interrogate Meinkewitz himself. Traitors to the revolution will be executed." No, he wants to defect." "We'll see, my friend. You have saved my life. I am in your debt." Chapter 32. Township Airport, Baltimore, Maryland, Monday, April 17, 1961, 9:30 p.m. He did not know who was driving, the 1957 Chevy trailing the plane. Once they were outside, he recognized Fletch Knight. "Robert?" Asham wore the same dinner jacket from the speech he had made earlier in the day. "How's it going, Fletch?" "Things are not good." Asham's relaxed demeanor never changed. "Is that right?" Asham sent Martyr and his assistant over to the Chevy. He and Fletch entered a Cadillac to the left. He took out his pipe and faced Fletch as the Cadillac began the 20-minute trip to his suburban Washington home. "Okay, let's have it. We're hanging on by our fingernails. They nixed the air cover because it was getting politically sensitive." "Well, that makes no sense, Fletch." Adlai Stevenson has become a huge problem.